Do you have a seemingly impossible farm dream that just won't go away? Cowboy Jess Evans will give you the encouragement you need to keep moving forward. If you're the woman who does it all, farm work, housework, bookwork, homework, getting up at the break of dawn, this is the podcast for you.
How do you multiply by fractions now?
Get away from the cares of the day. Restock, rootstock, feedstock, seedstock. Chat with women around the world who raise food, flowers, and fun. With your host, Kay Castrataro. That's me. Welcome back to Food, Flowers, and Fun. I am your host, Kay Castrataro, and as always, we are sponsored by Penlight for Farmers, helping you to create purposeful farm lives rich in time, energy, and abundance. And I'm pretty excited today. We have Jess Evans with us, the Conservation Cowgirl, which is pretty interesting because I have been told that cowgirls actually go by cowboys. So we've got all kinds of exciting nomenclature going on right here at the beginning. Jess, welcome. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Kay?
Oh, I am fabulous. So I love you. I love your story. So we always just kind of start off by saying, tell me how you got into this farming racket, because we all come here from very different places.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I was pretty much born into it. I I would say I didn't have a choice, but then again, I went into it very willingly. My family, my great-great-grandparents immigrated to California from two different places, Denmark and Portugal. And they coincidentally, both sides of the family got into cattle ranching pretty much right off the bat when they came to the States. And so, as you can imagine, a couple of generations down, that continued. And that's how I got into agriculture. I've always been more into the ranching side, so more into livestock, but my family did largely grow all of our own food as well when I was growing up. So I have some experience on that side as well.
Right. And your personal experience in livestock agriculture has been pretty varied. Like you've done roping horses and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, let us know what it is about the farming that you really, or ranching, I should say. That's really the more appropriate term.
Yeah. So I got started largely because my grandfather was a working ranch cowboy, working ranch manager, and he was really into the California style of horsemanship that he picked up from my great grandfather. And so I'll be honest, there was a little bit of hesitation on his side, I think largely because I'm a girl. But I spent a large portion of my childhood kind of just pestering him until he would give me all the answers. You know, I started riding my own colts late high school, early college, and I would just constantly ask him questions. Okay, my horse is doing this. What do I do next? And anything I didn't get from him, I learned through books or DVDs at the time,
Yeah.
YouTube videos, things like that. And then I really, in terms of ranching, I just love animals. I love taking care of them. I love the partnership that I develop with my horses. I love cattle. I think cattle are wonderful. And I do have a soft spot for them. You know, my cows all have names. So for me, it's really just about the connection with the animals, and then also being able to feed my community. That's huge for me, and take care of other people as well, you know? But yeah, I started out that way, riding ranch horses and cow horses. And then eventually I got into cutters, which is super fun. It's like riding an oversized border collie is usually the comparison that I make for people. And that kind of evolved into, like I said, I got more into the colt starting side of things. That's where I really found my passion. I really like problem solving, and a colt is just like a living, breathing puzzle that I have to, figure out how they learn best. And from there, I started a handful of mustangs. I rode jumpers for a while, and now I've gone back toward the western side. And I largely taught myself how to rope when I was younger, not very well, as you can imagine, enough to get a job done, but not very well. So I am currently in a state of learning how to team rope. And my current landlord that I part-time cowboy for, he's, yeah, teaching me how to do it properly and teaching me a lot of new techniques, which has been really fun.
Yeah, so I'm gonna dig into the different styles of horsemanship for a minute, just because I'm a horse fanatic, and so I love all things equine, and
Mhm.
and I'm picturing this California style of horsemanship. And I'm wondering if, for those of us who are not as familiar with it, if you would mind like explaining some of the distinctions between a California style horsemanship and maybe even like the cutting and the roping. Because I've done dressage, I've done, basic Western riding and, basic barrel racing, nothing like competitive or anything. But so I can look and see all the different styles in dressage versus jumping, and like they're all different styles. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the California style of horsemanship can be traced back to the mission days of California. And when people see a California cowboy, they're picturing the buckaroos with the flat hats and the two rein set up on their horses. And that's kind of the picture that you get when you think about it. And
Mhm.
the distinction between that and, say, the cutters is really the focus is just on creating a really solid working partner, a really solid ranch horse. Some people that ride this style, they do compete, they have the pro-am ropings and things like that. But it's really defined by the distinct stages of training that we have.
Okay.
So depending on how, you got some guys who are kind of purists about it, and then you've got others that take on the more modern style of it. So the first stage sometimes is the snaffle bit,
Yep.
which is very in line with what the cow horse folks do. And then you have the hackamore, which is no bit at all, and it's just a bosel. You've got
Mhm.
your Makati and everything.
Yep.
And then you've got the two rein, and then eventually that horse will grow into or be developed into a spade bit horse. And that's sort of the final evolution of that. But those stages, like I said, some of the purists, they won't bother with the snaffle bit. They'll just
Go
start them in the
straight to the hack.
hackamore and
Mhm.
go through to the spade. But those stages are really what define that style of horsemanship for us. And like I
Sure.
said, you can trace it back to the Spanish mission days of California. And because we had so much lush countryside out here on the West Coast and such a temperate climate, the Cowboys didn't have to stress about stuff like the Texans did, where it's like, oh gosh, it's, over 100 degrees out by 10 a.m. We need to hurry. They had more time to really develop their animals, and they got really focused on their horsemanship and just creating a really incredible horse. So that's kind of a torch that I've carried through my life and something that I hope to continue as I go.
Yeah, and so when you're training a young horse, the old the old term of breaking, I've never liked at all because it has this feeling like where it's what you see in the John Wayne movies where they like
Yeah.
throw them on the ground, they rope their hooves together, they get on the saddle, they let them loose, and then they just buck until somebody dies. I've never been a fan of that for either the people or the horses. I just think it's a very stressful and not very effective way to work with animals. So, can you tell me some of your guiding principles when you are starting young horses and how you've learned to adapt those to the different personalities of the animals?
So I grew up again with the California style horsemanship and under my grandfather. I mean, he was friends with Tom Dorrance, and
Mm.
he didn't know Ray Hunt, but they were in the same circles kind of a
Right.
situation. Um, and so that carried through to my education as well. And sort of I think the core principle there is you want to be as gentle as possible, but as firm as necessary. So,
Like
you
raising
know,
children.
exact comparison that I was going to make. And I don't have kids myself, but I am the oldest of eight, and my youngest brother is 15 years younger than me.
Wow.
So I feel like I can speak to it a little bit.
Of
Um,
course.
it's just like raising a kid. You want to be their friend and you want them to know that you're there to support them, but you also have to set boundaries. And I've heard Buck Brannaman make a pretty solid comparison of what happens, when you don't have those boundaries in place. The horse that does what you ask, but they're crabby about it, is kind of like the teenager that does take out the trash when you ask, but they flip the bird behind your back on their way out of that. So that's I would say that's the main core principle with that
Mm,
is being as gentle as possible, but as firm as necessary. Like my filly that I have right now, she just turned 2. I'm prepping her for her first ride, which hopefully is going to happen on Saturday. Um, he, he's super easy, but she does have a couple of tendencies where I'm like, oh, I have to watch that.
mm,
It's not malicious or anything, but she doesn't have a ton of respect for personal space. So that's something we've had to establish. But it's not like I'm wailing on her.
mm.
I kind of remind her, hey,
Yep.
give me, 3 feet of space, decent bubble around me, and you can come into my space when I invite you in. It's that kind of thing. And they take to that sort of structure, I think, pretty well because they get the sense that, okay, this small bipedal predator that I've decided to be friends with um, has enough confidence that I feel like if something hairy happens, they're going to take care of me. And I found that the horses that I've worked with in the past, they do look to me for guidance in situations where maybe they want to get spooky, they want to maybe take off or do whatever they're inclined to do when they get scared, but instead of leaning into that instinct, they're looking to me like, okay, if the human's not
Yeah.
freaking out, I'm going to freak out either. And as far as my approach with different personality types, that's my favorite part. Like I said, each horse is like its own kind of puzzle and I have to figure out what works and what doesn't. And working with, my domestic, really well bred 2-year-old is very different from working with the young Mustangs that I've worked with in the past.
Mm.
So, really, I have, because the horse industry is so interesting. Everybody has their idea of what works and what doesn't.
Right.
But I've learned to give myself enough room to play to do some creative problem solving in
Mm.
cases. Like, with a domestic horse, I might be able to saddle him up for the first time and swing my leg over him for the first time in that first session and not have any problems.
Right.
Whereas with a Mustang, it takes a lot more stacking.
Yeah.
I won't just do one long session each day. I'll do 3 30-minute sessions each day where
Mm.
we progressively add on top of what we learned the first time
Yeah.
in a much more like intentional and broken down way than even the domestic horses take. For
Right.
example, I had a Mustang filly when I was in Texas, and it was going to be very cold. Um,
Oh, it was going to be cold. I was thinking you were going to say it was hot, but it was one of
no,
the cold days we were talking about right off before we got
yeah,
started.
yeah. The when the blizzard happened in 2020, I think it was
Yeah.
2021. And I found a boarding barn that let me keep a young Mustang, which was crazy to begin with. But the owners were, Alibi doesn't have a lot of hair. Like we're worried she's going to be cold. And I was like, okay, I'll work with her on it. And she wasn't the type I could just throw a turnout blanket on her, and she'd be fine. She was terrified of it.
Yeah.
So this horse, I thought, okay, what's her personality like? She wants to be a boss mare. She's 13 hands, so she doesn't really have the size behind her to be a boss mare, but
She's
she
got
wants
the attitude. I had one of those. He was a gelding, but he was convinced he was a boss mare too.
yeah. So I was like, okay, she wants to be a boss mare and she's kind of cowy, kind of catty. She wants to chase things. It sounds so silly, and I'm sure it looked silly, but I was out there, I had a long lead rope and I'm leading her, dragging that blanket in front of her so that she got the sense that she could chase
She
it
was chasing it.
so that it wasn't like, she was in charge of
Yeah,
the blanket.
instead of it jumping down on top of her back like a cougar that was gonna like kill her, this was something that she could go after and she had the power. That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
exactly. So I would say at the end of the day, the foundational pieces are always there,
Yeah.
get the horse to the point where you can get a saddle on their back, get them used to all those movements that it's going to take for you to get on their back, putting your weight up in the stirrup and standing up and all those good things. But every horse is different, and you have to give yourself room to get creative with it when necessary.
Oh, I think that's such a good lesson for all, I mean, for life in itself, but for all types of farming really as well, that like to look at the fact that we can be creative. We don't have to know all the answers when we're going into something. Like having that goal in mind and saying, okay, I know that these are the key things that I want to accomplish. I know I need to get a saddle on them. I know they need to tolerate weight. I know they need to tolerate a person behind them and getting into that saddle. So those are my goals. But how I get to those goals, there are numerous different ways to do it and to not be afraid to look a little silly when you're trying it and
Yeah.
staying safe as you can, but also like to take a risk every now and again and to just explore the options. I think that's a really powerful statement. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a saying that I kind of use as a guiding principle for life at this point. The goal is written in stone, but the path is written in sand. So as
Mhm.
long as you know what you want, you can, again, take a creative license on how to get there.
Yeah.
There's a million solutions to the same problem. So,
So so you have perfectly set me up for this question. So you have a big goal in mind right now, a goal that is set in stone. And you are currently exploring different ways of achieving that goal. Can you talk to us about that? Because I think even this goal connects so much to what we were just talking about the relationship and the interaction between the horse and the trainer slash rider. And I think some of the community that you're looking to build and how I think a lot of interpersonal communications and team building is the same as building that relationship with an animal. So,
very much.
so talk to me about where you want to head and how that's looking.
So it is such a massive goal, which is why I kind of laugh when I talk about it. I have the goal of starting a ranch that is a cooperative and a CSA at the same time, that is completely co-owned and run by women. And on top of that, this ranch will be run using completely regenerative farming and ranching practices. And those practices will be largely grounded in traditional ecological knowledge. And yeah, the way that it's managed will be as ecologically sound and friendly as possible.
Mhm.
And also, in addition to that, I have a lot of programming that I want to form around this ranch. And it's, I almost see it becoming some sort of organization at this point, the way that things are slowly coming together, but offering a lot of conservation education and skill building education for women around that as well, because I find we're in this era where a lot of women are really craving this sense of competency and self-sufficiency, and they're also really wanting to have the ability to take care of their communities. So I'm trying to create a space that offers all of that.
Yeah. Wow. That is such a lot in there.
Mhm.
Um, I think one of the first things that strikes me is that idea of competency, that women want to develop that sense of competency and self-sustainability. And I think some of it is our time period. We are in American culture really kind of the first generation where women have all the legal tools at the moment. At the moment, we have finally achieved all the legal tools that we need to be able to actually be self-sufficient from birth to death, in the way that any person can be. We
Right.
have the ability to make our own money, run our own businesses, have our own credit cards, have our own bank accounts. We don't need a man co-signing for any of those things. We can own our own home. We can get our own mortgage. We can do all of these things that even up until the 70s, which I was born in 76. So even right when I was born, some of these things didn't come into place until the 80s. So like it happened in my lifetime that women actually had all of these things in front of them. And I think our generation, my generation, your generation, the ones coming up behind us, they're looking at this world and they don't look at it the same as we were taught. They're like, this is my world. This is no longer a man's world. This is my world too. And I don't like the way it's being run. I want to do it differently.
Yes.
And at the same time, I'm remembering what you were saying about your grandfather being a little bit like, I'm not sure I want to teach you this California style of riding because when you see it done, it's usually men who are doing it. Like my understanding is that was also a very male kind of thing. And so, yeah, so talk to me about some of the competencies that you think women are looking for and how you could see that happening. This is all like theoretical at this stage because you're in the process, but
So I think a lot of women, and this applies to women who, grew up in rural environments like I did, as well as women who didn't. Um, I think a lot of women just are getting that sense of, oh, hey, this isn't just a man's world. This is our world too. And
mm,
like you said, they want to see things run differently. But we've been told our whole lives that we're not capable of doing things that men can do. And so I find that a lot of that is really just opening up the doors to show women that, hey, yeah, sure, this is typically a very male dominated skill or a very male dominated field, but you have all of the capabilities to do it as well. It's just lowering the barrier to entry. And I've gotten, since I started talking about this, which the fact that it's only 2 months old is crazy to me. I've had this dream for years, but I was always way too afraid to talk about it. But the fact that I've been talking about it for 2 months and I've gotten the kind of response that I have, a lot of women, they've expressed, I want to know how to grow my own food. I want to learn how to weld. I want to learn how to do carpentry. I want to learn how to do, like we said before, just being completely self sustaining and self sufficient because we want to know and have the confidence that we can rely on ourselves and we don't have to rely on a man.
yeah.
Um, I as you know from our previous discussion, I personally don't need a man in my life in any shape or form. But even for the women that do, that have husbands, they want to be able to know that they can rely on themselves and that having a partner is, he's there because they want him to be, not because they need him to be. Um,
And for so many of us, just to jump on that, because I saw a reel of, I don't know, she's a real 19-year-old or a, trying to get clickbait 19-year-old,
sure,
but
sure.
a theoretical 19-year-old who just got married and was talking about how she doesn't have a job, she's not going to college, she doesn't want to do any of those things. And I sat there and I looked at her and I thought, oh, sweetheart, that's not good for you. And not because I have a problem with being a traditional housewife and, my mom was a housewife, farm wife kind of thing. Like I was a stay-at-home mom until I got divorced. And then you know what? I got divorced and it wasn't my choice, it was his choice and it was a good choice, but the fact was that happened. And so then I became single mom. Now, I was very blessed in the fact that I'm stubborn and I had a master's degree behind me. I had done all kinds of work outside of the home before I got married. So I had a career that I could kind of build. I had connections that I could tap into. And, I had all this stuff that when I got married, I maybe didn't need. But you
Mhm.
know what? The marriage ended.
Yeah,
And I have a farmer friend whose husband got killed in an accident. He was out cutting down trees on their farm and he
yeah,
got killed by a tree. So she had this like partnership that was really working for them. And
yeah,
now she's figuring it out on her own. So I
right.
think that even for women who think that more traditional, I can rely on a man, because I'm going to find the right one. We're going to have this is the life we're going to have.
Yeah.
Um, that might be the life you have until all of a sudden he dies or he leaves or he gets incapacitated in some way, he gets sick. Like, so I think teaching this generation of women to really own their lives and be capable of living on their own, even if they don't have to be. I think
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
really important thing to have that capacity. I love what you're talking about.
And it's so funny too, because as I build this, like I said, for me, I want it to be completely women owned and women run because land ownership, as we just talked about, there were a lot of rights that we didn't have up until the 70s or 80s,
Yeah.
like opening our own bank account, which is crazy to me.
Insane, right?
That
Couldn't own your
started
own
the
business.
year my mother was born, and that's insane to me. So for me, it's kind of about the historical aspect of it. I want it to be women owned and women run because not only does that align with my mission and my values, but it also really kind of I'm not so self-important that I think that I'm doing something historic here. But when you look at history, that's not something that has historically happened a lot. So
Right.
I want to be able to create that access for other women. And that combined with the fact that I'm queer and
Mhm.
I only date women, I have gotten a response from some people where they assume I'm some sort of man hater, but that's not it at all.
Mm,
In fact, it's quite
yeah.
the opposite. I have, by happy accident through this process, created a space for queer people, but the ranch itself is for all women. It's not just for queer women.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in my mind, kind of in line with this, helping women develop that sense of competence and capability, when you have that sense of confidence and capability and you know that you can handle things on your own, whether you date men or women or whatever the case, it actually allows you to love your partner more openly and more freely in a more healthy way because there
Yeah.
isn't that dependence there. It's an interdependence where you both come together and you both know I've got my stuff handled, they've got their stuff handled. Now we can come back together and build something instead
Right.
of, like I said, creating a dynamic that relies on that dependence for one party. And yeah, to me, that just opens up the door for healthier relationships as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, so much there. So
Yeah.
much there. And I think, you know, building healthy relationships is something that is a big core of what I do with my clients because I do believe that behind self-care, I think taking care of yourself is the first thing. Like if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be there for anybody else. But the second most important thing to that, I think, is knowing how to have healthy relationships and being able to build good boundaries and deal with conflict in a healthy way and, all of those things because your relationships really make you or break you.
Mhm.
And I love what you were talking about being interdependent as opposed to codependent or dependent, where interdependence has this sense that yes, we are two distinct individuals with our own well-developed capacities, and we are choosing to come together and merge those together into something new while not losing the things about us that are different from each other. Whereas codependence is, we need to stick together because we just can't function without this unit. Like if this unit falls apart, the whole world falls apart. And dependence is just being a child. Like it really is that like a child depends on their parents, a child should be dependent upon their parents. They don't have the age, the capacity, all of those things to be able to function on their own. But most adults should not be in that state. Like some adults definitely are because of, mental health issues or other things like that, that again, then we go and support in different ways. But in a general sense, I like that image of what you're talking about. And because you brought up the whole being queer and how that works in your vision, but also the way you present, your values to the world. when we did our screening, I asked you, how has that played out in the cowboy world? Because the term cowboy is so masculine to begin with. Like it's just and apparently that's the word. It's like the fishermen. Fishermen aren't fisherwomen and fishermen, they're all fishermen. So
Yep.
like there is that inherent patriarchal language going on. So what is that like for you?
So I do want to go back to something you said
Oh,
earlier
go to it.
about the use of the word cowboy. I use the name Conservation Cowgirl just to make it clear to people who are scrolling, through social media that I am a woman. But I actually think that cowboy is a very gender neutral term.
Yep.
All of the women that I've worked with in this industry, whether it's been ranching specifically or the performance horse industry, very rarely do they call themselves cowgirls. It's like, yeah, I cowboy, or they, use a more specific term, like I'm a herdsman or I'm a
Mm,
loper or whatever the case might be. But no, I think cowboy is actually a very gender neutral term.
yeah.
And when I talk to people about it in my personal life, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a cowboy.
Yep.
And if they're not familiar, they might kind of look at me weird when I say that, but no, I'm a cowboy.
Well, it's
Uh,
funny because, and I will just jump on this because this language thing has been, I have transitioned a lot in the language acceptingness because I tend to be a slow adopter of anything.
sure.
I'm a slow adopter, and I'm a little bit of a purist when it comes to language. And even that word is very interesting. So I try to be a purist, and I realize that none of us are really linguistic purists. But when we were because again, I'm old enough to remember when all words were cowboy or fisherman or fireman. It was just, it was a very masculine language. I
Sure.
remember a time when he he was not always a man. Like it was considered gender neutral for somebody you didn't know their gender. We would use the word he. And so when that started shifting, and the language started really dividing into male and female language, I was super uncomfortable with it. And I was just like, why do we have to? I know I'm very weird, but I was like,
Oh, I
why do we
just
have
find
to
it.
make an issue? Like, why do we have to make an issue of it? We all know that the language is meant to include everybody.
Mhm.
And then as I started understanding more about gender dynamics and really how there is a patriarchal system in our country in general, and how it has been a very oppressive and repressive form of control and not at all how I was trained to see it as kind of like men and women having complementary but equal roles. And I was realizing, no, that was an excuse for keeping women in their place and making it easier for men to have what they wanted without having to deal with women
Mhm.
wanting what they wanted. So then I had this like whole brain explosion and I had to change my
Crazy.
philosophy. Right. And so now I'm in this place with all of these things. Like my kids have friends who gender switch. Like there'll be a he one day and a she that day, and then they're they. And I totally am like, use whatever makes you feel good in the moment. Like it doesn't matter to me, but it does
Yeah.
mean that now all of these words are just, they confuse me. And so I'm constantly like, I don't even know how to talk anymore.
Here's the difference, Kay. You're making a genuine effort and speaking on behalf of the queer community. That's all we can ask for. If we know that you're making a genuine effort, then that's what makes the difference for
Oh,
us.
thank you. I appreciate that. And that's why it's always great to have somebody with a different perspective because I'm about as straight white woman as you can possibly get. Like, yeah, grew up conservative, Christian, like I'm the whole I'm not MAGA, but I'm like the whole, that whole pretty traditional
Yeah, sure.
package. So it's always fascinating for me to just see how the language affects other people. And I'm also curious, and I don't know if you can even speak to that because maybe we haven't been far enough down the line in history, but to see how once women have their uniqueness represented in the language, whether it doesn't matter as much. Like we become more
I don't
okay with
know.
it because it feels like it's more of a choice instead of a forced upon us. And that's just a I don't even know.
Fascinating thought. I don't personally, I don't think we're far enough along yet. I think
Mhm.
like kind of what you're saying is the making the distinctions that we've made in the language is in part to widen representation so
Mhm.
that there's more understanding and more people feel seen and heard. So yeah, I don't think we're far enough down that timeline, but I would be curious to see if what you're describing happens once that is, you know.
Maybe men will start using she for people that they. Do you think we could progress that far? That would be amazing, right?
Yeah, maybe. But to go back to your question about
Yes.
being queer in the ranching community,
Yes.
I it's been really interesting that I've had a much more positive experience than most people would expect.
Mm,
Um, kind of like what we talked about before, I will say I am set up for success in some ways. I am from California. I was born and raised here, and many, not all, but many of my experiences in ranching and the horse industry have been here. Um, and California is a blue state, so usually people are a little more open-minded around here. But I'm also what is described as straight passing in the
mhm.
queer community. I get teased all the time by my queer friends that if we're going out at night, they're like, "Oh, only one of us is gonna get hit on by women, and it's not you, friend. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, what do I need to do? I don't understand." Um, so yeah, I have that going for me as well. People don't immediately look at me and think, "Oh yeah, she is definitely into women." That would
Mm.
make my dating life a lot easier if that were the case.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a whole nother discussion we could get into on that. Yeah.
yeah. So thankfully for me, my experience has been that the only sort of negative response or discrimination that I've gotten from people has been from individuals who have a vested interest in what my sexuality is.
Mm.
So, by and large, that's been men that are mad that I won't go on a date with them, which I don't know what to tell you, dude. Wouldn't you rather go for somebody who's interested in you?
I mean, I would think of all the letdowns that you can possibly get. I'm sorry, I just don't date men would actually be kind of a good one for a guy because it's not, oh, I date men, but not men like you. Like, come on, like,
Way more hurtful. Um,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's largely been like I said, men that were mad that I wouldn't go on a date with them. And then I did have one experience with a woman who treated me not even poorly. She was just kind of rude to me, but then come to find out later that she's bisexual, and at the time she wasn't comfortable with it. So having me around, it kind of forced her to face her own queerness, and she
Mm,
wasn't ready to do that. So she had sort of a negative reaction towards me. And
mm.
we're friends now. So it's
Oh, that's
it
awesome.
all came
Awesome.
around in the end. But yeah, those are largely the only negative experiences that I've had. And what's even more interesting is that against my own assumptions and those of other people, none of those negative experiences have happened with like actual like genuine article cowboys. And I
Mm,
have like a real working cowboy never had an issue.
yep.
You're sort of and I don't want to like single any sort of group out or anything, but you're like good old boy just raised in the country, but not necessarily the type to have raised livestock and stuff. Those are
Right.
more the types that I get a negative reaction from. And I sometimes wonder if that's the case because like a working cowboy or even a rodeo cowboy, anybody who has experience around livestock, you know,
Yep.
we're really close to the cycle of life in that job.
Mm,
We see all stages of it. And
yep.
I think it gives you a really solid viewpoint on what actually matters and what doesn't. So
Mm.
I often wonder if that's part of the reason why I haven't been,
So
treated poorly. I,
take that a little bit further for me if you don't mind. So I love that phrase, focusing on what really matters instead of what doesn't. So what do you think it is that really matters both to you and in that environment? Like what do they really care about?
well, I mean, if you think about it, again, if you're referring to ranch cowboys specifically, our whole job is making sure that the animals that we care for are healthy and that they're going to live to see the next day, you know. So there's that whole awareness again of the cycle of life and that things can go wrong and that life is short.
Mm,
So it really puts into perspective like, oh, hey, maybe it doesn't matter that Jess is into women and it just matters that she works really hard and she really cares about the animals
yeah.
and making sure that everybody's good.
Yeah.
And I
Can
do
do
think
her
there
job. She does her job well.
I do my job.
She communicates well with the people around her and she does her job well, which is
Yeah.
that not like in a working situation especially is that not supposed to be the litmus test? Like forget whether you're a man or a woman, you're gay, you're straight, like whatever term you want to throw around. Um do you do your job and do you take care of the people you work with? Like if you
Yeah.
can do those
I,
two things, is that not what we're looking for?
exactly. I do think that there is a certain it's a mildly flawed perception, but an understandable one. I do think there's also an element of the men that I work with having a little bit of a perception that I'm perhaps more masculine than the average woman, which is hilarious to me because on the queer female spectrum, the queer woman spectrum, I'm actually quite feminine, despite the fact that I wear men's button downs most days. Dress like somebody's, you know, grandpa farmer type of person most days. I can clean up when I need to, but it does, I think, create a bit of a perception that I am more masculine than the average woman in their minds. So they're like, oh, yeah, it's just Jess. I can drink a beer with her, and she's into women too. So we have like a commonality between the two of
Topic
us.
of conversation we can
Yeah.
share.
I have to keep that in check occasionally, you know, when they're checking out a woman in front of me and they start making comments. I'm like, "Hey guys, I'm still a lady. Let's, you know,
Yeah,
keep it
yeah, there you're just not being appropriate. It doesn't matter who you're
right."
around. Like this is
Yeah,
not how we're supposed to treat women at all.
yeah.
Or how women are supposed to treat men for that respect, you
Yeah,
know?
I keep my female friends in check just as much as my male friends, and they will
Yeah.
tell you so. But it's funny because I think that perception has also helped me a little bit because I've just noticed that I don't get a lot of comments in the way of like, you know, them being under the perception that they're going to have to wait on me or that I don't work as hard, which is definitely not the case because if I have nothing else, I have a rock solid work ethic.
Yeah.
But you know, I also have tricks up my sleeve. You know, I get up 30 minutes earlier so that my horse is saddled before anyone else is, or my horse is the last one to go on the trailer so that I'm the first one on the horse's back. Like it's, you know, just like little tricks like that. But I
Are those tricks you came up with on your own? Did
no,
somebody
I
model them to
learned
you?
those
What made you do that? I'm
the
curious.
other cowgirls on social media. One of my favorite independent country western artists is Adrienne Brannon,
Mhm.
Buckaroo Girl, and she has a group on Facebook that I've been a part of for years. And during my 20s especially, and even now, but my 20s especially, I got a lot of like online mentorship from women in that group. So I
Hmm.
have them to credit for stuff like that. Um,
Nice. Well, I love that. I think that I'm thinking of the movie The Cutting Edge, the original one, not the remake. Um, but there's this man and this woman, and they're both ice skaters. And like he was a hockey skater, but now they're doing couples figure skating. And they just neither one of them wants to be the one who's behind. And so it's the same thing. They're like each sets the alarm a little bit earlier and then they get and the other one's on the ice and they're like
with each other.
and so it's who can run a little faster, run a little harder. It's that competition, but it is a way of, I think you're right, it's a way of asserting not asserting. It's a way of communicating competence before you ever do a thing. Like
Mhm.
if you're saddled up and you're ready to go, then they're the ones who are like, "Oh, wait a minute, are we all supposed to be saddled up and ready to go?" And even if they never they're never aware of it, there's
Mhm.
that sense of playing catch up, and nobody wants to be the one playing catch up. So,
Yeah.
so
And if they are aware of it, like my old foreman, like he knew all of my tricks. Like he that just to him it was like, oh, she's like genuinely trying to do a really good job. And in that sense, that just earns you respect either
right.
way. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
you can't do badly by doing your job well.
no,
That's
not
never going to hurt you.
yeah. Or if admitting that you don't know everything is really important. And
Mm,
just the things that don't take talent, showing up on time and really just trying your best get
yeah.
you 90% of the way there and having a good attitude. Because if people don't want to, if people don't enjoy working with you, it's not, things are not going to work out. So you just got to
No.
have a really solid attitude. And like I said, focus on those things that take zero talent at all. And finding some life hacks from cowgirls that you met on the internet is really helpful.
Well, and the truth is that ranching is hard work, farming is hard work, no matter what kind of farming you're doing. And
Yeah.
I have yet to meet a farmer who can just across the board be like, "Oh yeah, this is the easiest job I've ever had." Like, yeah, it's not. It's just not. And you've got only so much control over the outcome. So there's always that feeling that I could be doing my best and still be walking into a disaster through no fault of my own. And so I think what you're talking about, the things that take zero talent, like a good attitude, now, that might take determination because some of us are naturally more cheerful than others. Some of us are naturally kinder than others. And yet, that's not something that you have to be like gifted in to learn how to use good manners, to smile at people, to compliment somebody on a job well done. Like those little things really will go miles and
Yeah.
miles and just make the job easier. Like, don't you want to be around somebody who's smiling and saying, "Hey, I appreciate you," as opposed to somebody who's always, "Ah, the weather's crappy again today." Yes, yes, the weather's
Exactly.
crappy again today. Thank you for reminding us. Because we missed that. We missed the snow falling while we're riding our horse and our boots are
Right.
pinching our feet because they're blue. Yeah, we missed all that.
I
I've,
didn't.
I've never done a winter pack trip, obviously. Like,
So funny.
oh my goodness. Oh, so Jess, I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, there are so many things like we really did not get to talk nearly about the ranch the way that I would have liked to, just because I think there are so many interesting pieces and where you want to go, but that's okay because what that means is that like next year or the year after, when you've had not just 2 months to talk about it, but you've had, 12 or 24 months to talk about it, we can have you come back and then we can get to see where that vision, which we did get a clear set of, what kind of paths are taking you there. I'm really excited about that. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you my signature question, which I kind of feel like we already were addressing, but I'm going to ask you anyway. If you had one piece of advice that you thought every farmer should know, what would that be?
I think it would go back to what we were talking about earlier with the don't be afraid to get creative,
Mm,
you know. And we all have challenges that we're facing in the things that we're either trying to fix with our operations or the things that we're trying to build. But again, there's a million solutions to fix a problem, and it's quite possible that you just haven't found it yet. So
mm,
don't be afraid to get creative and don't be afraid to lean on other people too. This ranch builds has been really kind of a really good practice for me in that because I'm a hyper independent person. um, and it's been very vulnerable talking about my goals and putting things out there, but realizing that people are incredibly enthusiastic about it and really want to be involved has made me feel much more confident in the idea that, okay, not only can I get creative with how I pursue this and how the final iteration of it comes to fruition, but a lot of people want to be involved in this. So I have people I can lean on, and they may come up with ideas that I don't necessarily have. So
Yeah.
I think I think that would be the main thing.
Oh, I love that. I love the creativity, but I also love that connection to the community because that is something that comes up over and over on this show. Like guest after guest after guest is like you gotta find your people and you gotta lean on them and you've got to be a support for them back. And that when you have that, it's almost like you're unstoppable. It creates a critical mass that's so much bigger than the individuals. And
Yeah, the symbiosis of it is super important. It's
yes.
yeah, I I think that's so powerful. And like I said, I've only been talking about this for a couple of months. I can't wait to see what it looks like a year from now. I
I
think it's
can't
going to be
either. Oh, Jess, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed this. And thank all of you out there. And we will see you next time on Food, Flowers, and Fun. Bye.
How do you multiply by fractions, Mom?
Farmers calling, our show is all done. Goodbye, farewell, so long, adieu. See you next week, same time, same place for Food, Flowers, and Fun. Go in peace. Visit us at www.penlightfarmers.com.